what is it about the Wicker Man that has, and I know what it is because I love the film, I adore it, but could you tell my friends in the audience what for you personally is it that makes it feel, makes you feel it is the magnificent film it is, and your role in it is what it is for you?
Yes, of course I could answer that question at an enormous length, which
yes.
I obviously cannot do.
Right.
Robin is far more qualified, I think, to talk about the film as a whole.
Exactly,
than I
but
am.
I would like to move
I can only say, simply from speaking as an actor, speaking as the actor who was fortunate enough to play the part, fortunate enough to play Lord Summerisle, I can only say that it's by far the best part I've ever had, and the best written part, and the most absorbing, fascinating, and challenging film that I've ever worked in.
Good evening, Naked Britt Ekland fans, and welcome to one of the more tenuously Bond-connected movies that I've ever reviewed on this channel, The Wicker Man. But hey, it's October when I'm uploading this, and what better way to kick off spooky season than a film starring not one, but two co-stars of a 70s Bond film, as well as a wife of a Bond at that time. Yes, Mrs. Sean Connery has a role in this film. Just a quick heads up before we dive into this, I am going to be talking about this film as a whole, and that includes the ending, so consider yourself spoiler alerted from this point on, but to be honest, I'll be amazed if there's anyone out there who doesn't know how this movie ends. I mean, this is kind of like Planet of the Apes, where even on the front cover of, like, the DVDs and Blu-rays, they put imagery from the very end of the film. I can't believe that they do that. The Wicker Man concerns Police Sergeant Neil Howie, played by Edward Woodward, the most phonetically satisfyingly named actor in history. Howie travels to Summer Isle, a remote island community in the Hebrides, where there have been reports of a missing girl. While conducting his investigation, Howie, a staunch Christian, is equal parts offended and just weirded out by the pagan-inspired lifestyles of the islanders, which involves a lot of sex and nudity. Over a few days, he meets with the island's leader, Lord Summerisle, played by Christopher Lee, and pint puller Willow McGregor, played by Britt Ekland, whose most famous scene sees the actress topless, dancing around her room with the intent of giving Sergeant Howie the bluest of balls, with which the community can burn to a crisp, as it is revealed that the missing child was just a ruse to get the virgin Howie to the island for him to be sacrificed to the pagan gods, trapped inside the burning titular Wicker Man. It's a film where some of the behind-the-scenes history is, in a way, far more engaging than the film itself, and there are a variety of cuts available as a result. For the purpose of this viewing, I watched the final cut, which I believe is considered to be the definitive version of the film, even more so than the actual director's cut, weirdly enough, but each of the versions features a variety of scenes maybe not included in others, and some sequences are reordered. Looking into it, it really highlights the messy post-production history this film had, much to Christopher Lee's chagrin.
I would say anything up to a third, or possibly more, of my introductory scenes. A lot was cut out, which was a great pity.
Christopher Lee at one time or another cited The Wicker Man as his favourite film of his own films, and despite a relatively middling reception when it was first released, it has gone on to be a real cult classic and one of those films that I think most people have heard about and know about, even if they haven't seen it. It's one of those things that's been parodied and aped so much that it's a film that I think most people experience through osmosis these days. So before I get into my feelings about the film, I do just want to state that I don't know if people who don't follow me on Twitter are very aware of this, but I'm actually quite a big horror movie geek. I think because of this channel, people assume that I must just only be really into, like, big budget action movies, but really, thrillers and horrors are much more my cup of tea. I mean, look at my genre distribution on Letterboxd. Romance? Oh, get out of it. Some of my favourite films of all time would fall into the horror thriller category. I mean, Psycho, An American Werewolf in London, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Black Christmas, The Birds, Scream 4, Carnival of Souls, The Invisible Man, Reanimator, The Thing, Jaws, Delicatessen, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Frankenstein, Bride of Frankenstein, The Old Dark House. Seriously, it was a knife-edged choice between starting a James Bond YouTube channel or a James Whale YouTube channel. I'm making this point to lay out my horror credentials because I am very much a fan of the classics, but one subgenre of horror that I have never really fully gotten on board with is folk horror, and The Wicker Man is arguably one of the most classic of that genre. I've just never found the film terribly frightening or thrilling. I mean, there are a couple of scenes that I think are fairly brilliant. There's a scene where Howie is interrogating a classroom of school kids that is just really perfectly crafted, and the whole ending is obviously iconic, but aside from those sequences, the film doesn't really do all that much to move the dial for me. I think the performances are strong though, particularly Edward Woodward and Christopher Lee, and the latter in particular really shines as the leader of this island, and he has such a pleasant menace about him. Britt Ekland too is great, and it's funny that the pair of them ended up on the very same Bond film together the following year. I assume someone at Eon caught this film and felt very inspired. I wonder what scene in particular convinced them that Britt Ekland would be the right choice for a Bond girl. And yes, Sean Connery's wife of the time, Diane Cilento, appears as Miss Rose, a teacher, and the actress would actually go on to marry the film's screenwriter, Anthony Schaefer, after her marriage with Connery ended soon after the film was released.
I think a pretty significant stumbling block with me in this film is the music. Like, I just don't like folk music in general, and so much of this soundtrack is folk music songs, and it's all like, the jolly bee flies to the tree to get the lovely honey.
And I appreciate that it's musical irony. I think that that can work quite well. You know, the idea that you're hearing a lot of, merry-sounding songs while creepy things are happening on screen. Mr. Sandman springs to mind. It appears in a couple of the Halloween movies, and that's all well and good, but just in this instance, it just doesn't do it for me. And I know that that's a heathenistic thing to say about the soundtrack for this film, because I think it is very much a part of the character of it, and for a lot of people, it is a part of this thing's DNA. I know some people appreciate the film on a darkly comedic level, and I kind of get that. There are some things that are just a bit funny about certain scenes. I mean, Howie being teased from Ekland on the other side of the wall is something that I can't help but smirk at times. Just, wow, he really goes for it with the sexual frustration. His balls could be additional members of the Blue Man Group. I think I'm perhaps being a little bit too down on this film, though. I still think that it is a 6 or 7 out of 10 experience, and I've been more positive about films that I would rate, similar rating on this channel. I just guess I'm focusing on the things that I like less about it, because I'm conscious that this is considered to be something of a masterpiece by some people, and whenever you see something that is so lauded and you come away with a relatively average reaction, I always find that stings a little bit.
Not gonna mention the other critically lauded movies that I have similarly meh reactions to.
I will say, I'm never bored during the course of the film, and the performances are really great. They do keep me engaged, and also I do love just films of this era, how they were shot, the rough and readiness of it. I love the graininess of the film. It has such a texture and identity to it. There is an atmosphere to the thing, just not one with much menace for me personally. I suppose it's also saying something that I'm not completely bowled over by the Bond connections every time I watch this. Like, I do get lulled into the story, and I never feel like I'm watching Scaramanga and Goodnight on a previous adventure, though I suppose the fact that Ekland was dubbed probably helps with that.
Cheer up. Food isn't everything in life, you know.
But not only that, in her famous nude dancing scene, they actually employed a body double, which feels a bit weird given that Ekland was already mostly naked anyway, but the fact that they did it behind her back is a bit shady.
And I was devastated. I couldn't believe it, because he promised that he wouldn't do that. And the model's body looked nothing like mine. She had this big ass and, and I was just devastated. And it was like, well, sorry. Of course now, in my fan mail, I get this poor woman's ass that they want me to sign every time. And I just send it back saying it's not me, sorry.
But the film is really a vibe unto itself, and both performers do great work. While I may never be as upwardly enthusiastic of the film as some diehard fans might be, I must say that, I have seen the film 6 or 7 times now in my life, and there is something that keeps me coming back to it time and time again, so who knows, maybe in 20 years I'll be naked, donning a wig and prancing around a maypole myself, and I do recommend that people seek the film out. It is obviously iconic for a reason, and who knows, maybe you'll enjoy it a damn sight more than me. Just for posterity's sake too, yes, I have seen the film's remake and spiritual sequel. The latter, The Wicker Tree, is a pretty abysmal film by my reckoning. Only worthwhile viewing for absolute diehards or those interested in cinematic curios. The remake, on the other hand, is absolutely hilarious if enjoyed with alcohol and a few friends, and that's the only way that I would ever recommend approaching that one.
As always, please do let me know your own thoughts about this film in the comments section below, particularly what you think of Christopher Lee and Britt Ekland. And also below you can find links to my other various social media pages, including my Twitter page and my Letterboxd page, so you can follow me on those if you want to hear my other thoughts about tenuously connected Bond movies. With all that being said, and until next time, Christopher Lee and drag fans, so long for now.
Where's Mr. Bleecker?